link. Here we go. And we're live. This is Sound Booth Theater Live. And we are here with Eric Nylund, author of Hero of Thera. Your Hero of Thera came out in 2017, right?
Yeah, I'm ashamed of it having taken so long. But like I was telling you last year, I worked on 5 projects at the same time. It was too much, and I got set back because I was trying to take shortcuts.
Well, I have no doubt that the time was well spent and that we're going to get a high quality piece of literature here because the first one was such a huge hit with pretty much everybody. I didn't see a single person say anything bad about Hero of Thera. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was one of the best lit RPGs I'd ever done, and I'm so excited now to get to do the sequel. Um, as you guys saw, the thumbnail was actually Hero of Thera's cover with 2 written on it in crayon, but we there is a cool new cover. I actually really love the cover as well for Hero of Thera. It's very minimalistic and it's got that nice kung fu flavor. And I think the second one does the exact same thing, just with with the well, I'm not gonna say. Am I supposed to not spoil the cover?
Hey, we're gonna have enough spoilers tonight, I think.
Okay, all right. So when first of all, what is the release date for A Thousand Drunken
Um,
Monkeys?
I got in trouble earlier this year by giving a date and then blowing past it. So let's just say real soon.
Really soon, guys. It's coming really soon. Sooner than the audiobook.
Yeah,
Um,
probably.
but but it's gonna be soon. I know that everybody has been bothering me about your book, trying to figure out when the second one is coming out. And now that it's finally here, we have a bunch of people
I,
just so excited.
I got to tell you, all my beta readers
Mhm.
said, "Are you gonna have the same guy who did the first do the audiobook?" Because they all loved your voice.
Yes, and I love Hector's voice too. I was just telling Eric that I've used Hector's voice now in a lot of different books. He's a great MC voice. He's a great villain voice. So yeah, he's become a big star in my little troupe. So Eric, can you tell us, for anybody who hasn't read Hero of Thera, and um, would like to know a little bit more about what all the hype is about, could you give us a little breakdown of Hero of Thera
Yeah,
and what to expect here?
sure. It is in the vein of many other lit RPGs or game lit. A hero is actually transported to this fantasy world. And the interesting thing about this fantasy world, apart from it being a fantasy world, is that all the gods and demon princes and other super entities of power kind of play this game through proxy heroes to see who's going to control all of creation. So
High
it's a game
stakes.
within a game. Yeah. And Hector is one of the few people who knows uh, that the person running the game is cheating.
Right. And that person thinks that's a problem. They want Hector gone. Or to be on the dark side with them.
The other fun thing about there, I have it's fun to play with, is there are a lot of gates and portals to other worlds in there, like hundreds, and all sorts of weird stuff comes through there. It still is a fantasy world, but you'll see things from different fantasy worlds floating around, or when you get to some of the character descriptions made maybe later in the program, some of them are really odd. Uh, but if you read a lot of fantasy, you'll see where they come from. There are a lot of Easter eggs in there.
Awesome. So for the second one, for anyone who has read the first one, we picking up right where we left off from the first one?
I think there is an evening. I don't necessarily say this, but I think our hero blacked out from too much partying. So there's a gap, and then we start right away.
Okay, awesome. Well, I remember that party. It was quite fun. Um, well deserving of a blackout. And so, well, let's get started now. Eric has given me quite a few scenes for us to choose from to test out. Well, first of all, I'm going to do the first 6 paragraphs of the first chapter just to give you guys a little bit of an intro to the book. Um, and then after that, we're going to go explore some new character voices and maybe revisit some old character voices and just have some fun hyping up the book. So here goes. Chapter 1. A quest. Nothing stirs the blood of a gamer like a gallop through fog-shrouded woods with an accompanying soundtrack of Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries or Metallica's The Four Horsemen. Take your pick of the classics. Beyond yonder misty mountain, we'll find a dragon's cavern filled with gold and a princess or prince desperate for their heroic rescue. Unfortunately, the game I play has no accompanying soundtrack, nor any eager to be rescued princesses. It's messier, too. As in, how was I supposed to keep raw sewage off my new troll skin boots? Alas, I was not galloping toward glory, riches, and my one true love. Tonight, I was in Low District. Still wondrous High Hill, but the worst part of town. Basically a place where tourists like me ended up on "Have you seen this person?" flyers. I suspected every fantasy city had one of these places. When L. Frank Baum wrote of the Emerald City, I'd bet good silver that he omitted at least one alley filled with drunk munchkins pissing themselves. Stuff like that didn't sit well with readers who like their heroes sparkling, their damsels virginal, and a big fat happy ending. And a big fat happy in their endings. Oh yeah. Oh man, it feels good to narrate like that now. All right, cool. So let's look at your list here. You have chapter 7. Start at "I held my breath and peered" in the eyepiece. Is this a good one here?
It gives some description of the characters, the new player characters you'll meet in the book.
Oh, cool.
No, I gave you bad examples.
Oh, okay. I held my breath, and that's the beginning of a paragraph, I'm assuming.
I don't know.
Let's search for it. There it is. And ends on "She typed to an invisible keyboard." All right. Or for a longer version. Okay. I held my breath and peered into the eyepiece. The first player was hard to miss. She was a wood elf who wore a three-sided pirate's hat bedecked with ostrich plumes, a ruffled red shirt crisscrossed with bandoliers, black leggings, and a wide leather belt holding a hand crossbow, rapier, and assorted pouches. It looked as if Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Errol Flynn had tried to, and done a poor job of, copying her flamboyant style. Her player tag read, "Cassie Longstrider, Ranger, Swashbuckler, Level 12. Wonder Women." I whispered this to Elmac. Oh, I'm trying to remember Elmac's voice. Was he like scratchier?
Like, so
Regular.
if you know the dwarf from Lord of the Rings,
That's got okay. Regular
that's him.
customer, he told me. It wasn't there when we walked in. A bit, uh, rowdy when she's had too much. Grand tipper, though. Wonder Women? Morgana looked into the distance, searching her memories, or checking her interface. Yeah, like the likes of Athena, Hera. Yeah, like the likes of Athena, Hera, Valkyries. If Joan of Arc was in the game, that's the clan she'd be in. If, that is, she wasn't already a Catholic saint. I continued my search and spotted another player, this one climbing out of the molten pit. He wore a chainmail hauberk that fit him like a second metal skin. It glowed red-hot, but rapidly cooled to dull silver. Completing this heat-proof ensemble was a helmet with curved horns and a metal club big enough to flatten a horse. I read his tag for the others. Grimhalt, Cleric, Zealot, Level 9, The Wild Hunt. Morgana growled, "Ran into that one before." When I'd met Morgana in the free trial, she'd told me that one of these wild hunt people had hassled her. Couldn't have been this guy because he was too high level to engage in PvP combat with a first or second level character. Although if Morgana hadn't known into that, whoa, looks like I'm. Sometimes Mobi formatting is weird and it'll like get rid of a sentence.
Yeah.
Although, if Morgana hadn't known about this rule at the time, he could have chased her into that zombie-infested forest, where the unliving would have torn her to pieces for him. So, one more on the naughty list. He's psychotic, that one, Morgana said. Agreed. And wait, agreed, Elmac muttered. The Wild Hunt has gods that... I held up my hand. I know about the Wild Hunt. I hadn't meant to be so rude and cut Elmac off, but just then I spotted another player, and couldn't focus on anything else. This guy wore gray robes whose silky fabric shimmered with subtle twinkling reds and greens, nebula and stars that were not merely embroidered. Rather, this looked like the real thing, a window into the cosmos. Is nebula... is that pluralization pronounced differently? Is it nebulae?
Nebulae. I should ask my astronomer friend, Mike.
I will check. Okay.
Nebula.
I guess it's the same. You just know it means plural when the E's on the end. That's weird. Okay. I didn't think he was human. His features were angles and planes devoid of a single curve. It was like Picasso had chiseled a face from blue-gray slate, the color of a drowned corpse. Yet he was also somehow unearthly handsome. Creepy, too, because crowning his bald head was a ring of 7 penny nails driven halfway into his skull, reminiscent of Pinhead in Clive Barker's 1987 nightmarish flick, Hellraiser. Almost in a trance, I read his placard for Elmac's benefit. Harlix Hadri, Wizard, Researcher, Level 12. Sapientia Eterna. Sapientia Eterna, I said. My Latin's rusty. That's what? Smart forever? Eternal wisdom, Elmac corrected. Heard of them? Morgana said, tapping her lower lip, not sounding happy. Think from one of my guildmates. Just a tick. I'll send a quick message. She typed on an invisible keyboard. I watched this Harlix wave over a city guard. The guard jumped, started to salute, but halted the gesture midway. I looked like the wizard had pulled with the city's officials, but wasn't one of them. I set the spyglass down, tabbed to the notes section on my interface, and wrote down everything I'd just learned. Unlike Morgana's clan, mine had no database on players, clans, and game abilities. This was as good a start as any. When I had it all copied, I grabbed the spyglass and continued to search. There were plenty of guards and onlookers, but no more floating title placards. I didn't see the one person I thought would be here. Colonel Delacroix. If anyone could get to the bottom of why these assassins were after us, it'd be High Hill's chief of the not-so-secret police. Where was he? Where was she? Hold on, what was the... I'm trying to remember... What was the line I'm supposed to stop on?
Well, I think you blew past it.
Oh,
So.
I blew past it, yep. Erased, destroyed, or dead. Okay, we'll just go ahead and get to that. I forgot all about Delacroix as another person caught my eye. She wore a veil and white dress with gold spirals along the arms. In the firelight, it looked drenched in blood. She turned from the smoking ruins and looked across River Street. If I hadn't known better, I'd have said she gazed directly at me. The light was all wrong, though. I was in deep shadow behind slitted blinds, and the flame-lit glare off the store's window would have further obscured my presence. For all intents and purposes, I should have been invisible from her vantage. Behind her veil, I thought I caught a glimpse of ghostly indigo blue eyes, like smoldering coals. She then turned back toward the remains of the Bloody Rooster. The Bloody Rooster is the bar, right? Or the
Yeah,
tavern? Yeah.
yeah. There are minor spoilers in this performance tonight.
Oh yeah. By the way, guys, I think people know spoilers are coming if they come to the show.
All right.
It's just the way it works. Here we go, Morgana said. Got a reply. I stepped back and lowered the spyglass. She paused. She paused to scan the message. Eternal wisdom. Blokes are a pack of wizards and higher IQ types, dedicated to gathering knowledge and secrets. Her features slackened. Membership includes litters, elder god devotees, and evil genius types. Lovely. Smart and evil. One of my least favorite combinations. Right up there with ignorant and loudmouthed. Wait, I said. That doesn't mean this Harlix guy is necessarily evil. His wizard specialization is researcher. That has to be, what, like a librarian? Hang on, Morgana whispered, scrolling ahead. Yeah, she told me. No, says researcher is more like an inquisitor. They're known to extract knowledge from items, history from places, and secrets from people, and are none too particular on the condition they leave the things that information gets extracted from, as in erased, destroyed, or dead. All right. Ooh, so that that dwarf's voice is hard. It's hard for me to retain the Scottish accent with his voice, but I've been trying to attempt him ever since the first hero of Thera, and that he's one that I need more practice on. So
Well, there's a lot of Elmac in this book, so
I'll get plenty of practice then.
so
Gotta
what you
get him
need to
right.
do is get a bottle of scotch
Yep.
and rewatch Lord of the Rings,
Yes,
and you'll
absolutely.
have it.
I'll get it that way. All right, let's see. Chapter 7, chapter 13 was the next one. And I'm excited about this one. Okay, so this is Oswald the fairy?
Oswald Otter
Oswald.
Cakes.
Why is my Gmail not working? Come on now. There we go. All right. Yes. Toward the end of chapter 13. Let's see what people are. Oh, you guys, thank you so much for the kind words. People are relatively active in the chat right now. All right. Oh wait, I forgot to look at the ending spot. The end of the next chapter. Okay, got it. The other side of the little bridge suddenly ended in another place. It was an island floating in outer space. The thing was 50 feet across, covered with a mossy lawn and dotted with a few worn river stones. A tiny spring fed a stream that snaked across the island and fell off the edge. What? And fell off the edge, becoming a glittering tail of ice crystals in the star-filled void. Important safety tip: stay on the island. On the opposite side was another footbridge like the one we had just crossed. Sitting on a rock in the center of the island was what I assumed was the Chaos Knight. It had taken the form of a fairy? He was a foot tall and wore a black trench coat, black t-shirt, black leather pants, and tiny mud-encrusted platform Doc Marten boots. Rose-colored sunglasses covered anime-sized eyes that were ringed with melting mascara. He could have just stepped off the stage of a heavy metal concert. The little guy tossed aside the Sandman comic book he'd been reading. His dragonfly wings ruffled, and he leapt to the ground. Elmac whispered, Be looking a wee bit different than last time. With arms akimbo, the fairy declared, okay, now you wanted, what was it, the description that you wanted me to
You
match?
know, German heavy metal voice.
Okay.
But
All right.
whether or not you increase the register to account that he's a fairy or not, that's up to you and your vocal cords.
I don't I feel like maybe I shouldn't because I want to get that heavy metal feel. I don't want him to sound too tight, I don't want him to sound too goofy. We want to I think it's more funny if he's less goofy, perhaps, because he is a
Sure.
fairy and we've already established he's tiny, so okay, let's see. Halt. Halt. Let's try something. Halt, unworthy travelers. Return whence you came, or dare to win passage by test of wits or force of arms. Chapter 14. No offense, I said, but you are the Chaos Knight guarding this gate, aren't you? The fairy looked around as if he was unsure I was addressing him, then blinked and said, Of course not, Cretin. Do I look like the Grand Imperial Champion of Disorder and Slayer of the Seven Sovereign Justices of Elysium, Her Greatness, Dominota Coreleva? Coreleva? He huffed. But I see how you might make that mistake. My power can overwhelm simple-minded riffraff such as yourself. Rest assured, however, I am more than capable of dispatching your likes. He rolled his neck, cleared his throat. However, if you wish to wait for her ladyship, she is presently on her coffee break and will be back in later. I'm not sure precisely when. Time can get a bit tricky in the in-between. My mouth opened to reply, but honestly, the little guy had me stumped. Was he for real? What will it be then? He asked, and tapped his boot. Wait for the Grand Imperial Champion to kill you? Try your luck with me by honorable combat, or... He chuckled. Ha! Trial by riddle. Or take the most prudent option. Depart and live to tell the tale of how you cheated fate this day. He glanced to his discarded comic book as if all he really wanted was to get back to his reading. Suddenly by my side, Morgana said to the fairy, One moment, please, good sir. She then huddled with me and Elmac. This sky is full of it, I whispered. I say just drop-kick the half-pint into outer space. Elmac paled and Morgana shook her head. Don't, she whispered. Fairy magic is right tricky. You go and kick him, and that starts his test by honorable combat. He wouldn't have offered that without something up his sleeves. And riddles. And, riddles, Elmac shivered. I'd rather fight another hellfire demon than try a fairy riddle. They not be known for losing. Quite right, the fairy said. The creep had better hearing than I realized. I looked up. A stupid grin was plastered across his sharp features. His gaze locked on Morgana, and he sobered and bowed. My pardon, lady. I didn't see until just now that you are a distant cousin to the Fae. Please accept my apologies and profound wishes for your continued good health. Cousin? I murmured. Later, she hissed. Morgana gave him an awkward curtsy. Good day to you too, cousin. Suppose there's no letting me and my mates just... She nodded to the far bridge. Alas, no, he said with a sigh. This is a union gig, and... He spread his hands as if that explained it all. At least I finally knew why Morgana's features had always struck me as more sharp and wild than a normal elf. She had a few pixies infesting her family tree. I bet it gave a boost to her shapeshifting powers, but I wondered if her choice during character creation had been mere pragmatism, or had she been emulating her namesake, Morgana Le Fay. Just so we be known the rules, Elmac said. We win, we pass. But if we lose, ah, indeed, the fairy replied, then you lose. I will claim one of you as my slave for, say, he tapped his pointed chin. 1 year. 1 year. I need a new roadie for my band. Our last one lost his hearing, eyes, and a few other parts. Cobra scales rippled over Morgana's throat. Not bloody likely. The fairy vigorously shook his head. No, not you, cousin. His gaze turned to me. Sorry, that's a truck. His gaze turned to me. Him. I don't think so. Elmac set a hand on my arm. Let's just be leaving. There may be another way around the far fields. Longer. Different. Longer. Different risks. In a ghost of a whisper, he added, but no fairy magic. Morgana nodded her agreement. Hang on a second, I said. I wanted to think this through. The fairy was trying to rattle me, and it was working. I took a deep breath and set aside my growing urge to stomp him flat. Morgana was right. It was too obvious a choice to fight him. That had to be a trap. I also agreed with Elmac. I was okay at riddles, but my 0 intellect wasn't going to cut it with such a supernatural creature. A window popped open. Quest alert. 1,000 drunken monkeys. Bonus segment. One little complication. Defeat the fairy in a contest of arms or wits. Rewards, bonus experience, and a special reward, dependent on outcome. Suggested party? You're on your own. Warning. Failure may result in enslavement. Accept yes or no. Morgana cocked her head. That confirms we're on the right path, yeah? Elmac, not being able to see it, glanced about, confused. I read it to him in English. But it be a bonus segment, Elmac whispered back in English. So, optional. Well? The fairy demanded. He looked annoyed, probably because he didn't speak my native language. Put a cork in it, I told him. He glowered and started pacing. I was thinking about this all wrong, thinking like Hector, with a K. Gypsy elf and resident fantasy character, not like Hector, with a C, who had a college degree in computer science with a minor in physics, and a brand of magic all his own. This so-called trial by riddle, I said. Would it be possible for me to ask you a riddle? The little guy tilted his head, then burst into laughter so hard he fell over, holding his sides, which slowed to hiccups as he got back to his feet. You riddle me? What would be the point? I've heard them all. Hector, Elmac said, what be you doing? I've got this. Sure, sure, I know. Famous last words. What was this magic I had? Well, the funny thing about all those physics and computer science classes I'd taken, they'd all had math prerequisites. Not that anything fancy was required here. Good old-fashioned algebra to do the trick. You know, mate, it's your butt on the line, Morgana whispered. I waved away her concern. Do you agree? No, sorry. Do you agree? I asked the fairy. Or perhaps it's too large of a challenge for you. I felt my taunting tenor skill warm to a simmer. The fairy's face turned a lovely shade of lilac. He puffed out his chest. I accept your challenge, foolish elf. Riddle away. Ah, one moment, I said. I demand reciprocal conditions. In addition to letting us pass, if I win, you become my slave for a year. The fairy pulled his sunglasses down a bit and peered at me over the rims. Sure, whatever. I can't crack my knuckles right now. He cracked his tiny knuckles. Very well, then. I cleared my throat, draped Shilian. How would I pronounce that?
Shelan.
Shilan?
Yeah.
Shilan over my shoulder, then pretended to consider long and hard, and finally, with a thespian flourish, said, "What is the sum of +1 and -1 divided by the sum of -1 and +1?" The fairy blinked. "What?" I repeated myself, slower. "That's not a riddle," he declared, and crossed his arms over his chest. "Are you sure?" He frowned, brightened, and from his back pocket fished out a tiny book. I squinted and saw the gilt title, The Fey Unpractical Guide to Trickery, 213th edition. He rifled through gossamer thin pages, found what he was looking for, and mumbled aloud, "A riddle is defined as a question or declaration that requires imagination, intuition, and or intellect to deduce or guess its answer or meaning." He gave me a smug smile. "Then," I replied, "I believe I just gave you a question that requires imagination, intuition, and or intellect to deduce or guess its answer." The little guy's smile held, but a trickle of sweat appeared at his temple. "I'll give you 30 minutes. Why, any 14-year-old on my world would have the answer in seconds. If said 14-year-old had been paying attention in algebra class. Or perhaps," I said, "an even shorter period of time." He trembled with rage at my taunt. I felt a bit like a bully egging him on, mainly because it was too easy. But since my own skin was at stake here, too bad. He gathered himself and stood straighter, perhaps a full 13 inches. "This will be trivial." He reached behind the rock he'd been sitting on, retrieved a satchel, pulled out a scroll and quill, and started scribbling. "Let's see. 1 and -1, that's 0. -1 and 1. How silly. That is also 0. What a dumb riddle. So, 0 divided by 0 is simply..." His face went slack. "Oh," Morgana said. A former high school biology teacher, Morgana had to have substituted in for a few math classes, so she got it. Elmac murmured to me, "But anything, anything divided by itself be..." "Shh," I told him. "No helping, not even a teensy-weensy bit." At this, the fairy snapped the tip of his quill, spattering ink everywhere. He growled and reached into his satchel for a spare. "Yes, 0 divided by 0 is 1, he said to himself. "Is that your answer?" I asked. He looked up, hesitated. No. Wait, something's not right." He bent over his scroll once more and scratched away. "Ah, yes, of course, so easy. Why, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. Child's play." "Oh, no. Anything divided by 0 is infinite." "Is that your answer?" He glanced back and forth among the 3 results he'd jotted down. This was the crux of the riddle, but he didn't realize the answer was staring right back at him. His eyes bulged and he pulled out tufts of his black hair, which I noted was only dyed jet black. He had lime green roots. And so it went for a time. The fairy filled 5 scrolls with increasingly complicated equations. "No, that can't be right. No. What?" He finally stomped about in a circle, kicking the scrolls, booting his satchel, and spilling the inkwell. "Ah!" "Is that your answer?" He wheeled to face me, panting and puffing, teeth grinding. "No! This riddle is wrong! What madness is this?" I decided to finish him before he figured it out. "Tut-tut," I said. "No need to have such a short fuse, my man. Perhaps you require a little more time." He froze, and, although I thought it not possible, his apoplectic lilac shade deepened to eggplant. "My apologies, good sir. I had no
That's
intention..."
Hector.
Oh, my apologies, good sir. I had no intention of diminishing your status as a self-proclaimed riddle master. Oh, pardon my faux pas. I meant to say there is no need to be a baby about this. Again, pardon my insensitivity. By way of apology, could I offer you a beverage to calm your agitated state? My companion here could provide you a pint. Or maybe, more appropriately, a half pint? Gah! He drew a slim gold dagger from his belt. Die, interloper! Oh, no, you don't, Elmac said. You agreed, Fairy. A trial by wits. And wits it'll be, or you be forfeiting the contest. At this, the fairy tossed his dagger aside, threw himself on the grass, and wailed. Morgana shook her head. Must you torture the little blighter? Oh, absolutely, I said. He sobbed and pulled out handfuls of grass and stuffed them into his mouth. Had I driven him over the edge? I almost stepped forward to tell him it was okay, that the riddle was a simple trick. Fortunately, the good intentions that might have been my undoing were stopped. There was a thumping sound like cinder blocks dropped onto a hardwood floor. Morgana, Elmac, and I turned to the right. A new bridge appeared with what could only be the Chaos Knight back from her coffee break standing on the threshold. Blimey, Morgana whispered. That's not... Aye, has to be, Elmac told her. Yeah, we were pretty much screwed. All right.
Well,
Dude,
I like his voice.
you like it? Okay, good. So,
Yeah.
so it's not like super high. It can get high because if he gets excited, but obviously trying to be a badass.
Yeah, I think definitely not taking it high was the right call.
Yeah. All right. So, what is next? That was chapter 13, and let's look at the other one you sent me. Here we go. All right. So, Master Cho, do we want to visit him?
If you want,
what's chapter 22?
Chapter 22. Hang on. Oh, that's a little bit of dialogue with the three characters you met earlier interacting with our characters.
Okay.
The main characters.
How about we do that portion and then this one with Master Cho?
Let's skip to Master Cho because I'd rather get him in and some of the kung fu stuff later rather than get to the. So Master Cho, I'll send you voice notes later, but I thought of him as in my voice notes. I said, "Can you do Peter O'Toole in Lawrence of Arabia?" And then I started watching that movie and I realized that he has like 17 lines of dialogue in the whole movie or something crazy like that. So refined British, calm, commanding accent, like you'd see in a dubbed Shaw Brothers kung fu movie.
Okay. Shaw Brothers. I'll take that note. Cool. All right. So let's go. We'll do the chapter 22 one then. Meet these people. Start at Grimholt grabbed a chair.
So Grimholt is this, tank cleric, super badass, but he was recruited into the game when he was 13.
Okay.
And he kind of didn't mature after that.
Nice.
So while he has his commanding voice, deep, evil, as you'd expect voice, he kind of talks like a 13-year-old.
Okay. And no, do we want an accent or anything? Or is he American is an American kid?
I thought so. There's so many accents in this book already.
Okay. Deep, commanding. Should we add any grit to it?
Sure.
Okay. Grimholt grabbed a chair and dropped it at our booth. He slammed one booted foot on the seat and leaned over us. Well, well, he said, leering at Morgana. A trickster. A pretty one. Too bad I have orders to string your kind up. I was about to jump up and snap this joker's neck, but an in-game message popped. Morgana Knox. Wait. We are safe here. His clan and mine equals KOS. KOS was gamer speak for kill on sight. But, okay, if Morgana knew more about what was going on, I'd follow her lead. Or try to. This close, I saw burn scars covered Grimhalt's face, and his left eye was partially melted shut. The injuries looked old, or maybe they'd been magically healed. Badly. The iron mace at his side weighed 40 pounds if it was an ounce. He smelled of sweat and machine oil. He wore plate boots and greaves, but it was his chainmail hauberk that caught my eye. The pattern... well, I couldn't see one. There were sections that crazed along in a serpentine-like weave, but every ring was a different size, and in spots, so many linked together it was practically a solid mass. He shifted, and I glimpsed flickers of ghostly fire among the rings as if the mail had been drenched in kerosene and set alight. He must have a heck of a strength to fight in that gear. Morgana's more informed opinion on the situation notwithstanding, I just couldn't help myself. I wasn't going to let his threat to her go unchallenged. After all, I had a special skill for such occasions. "Hey, buddy," I said in a surprisingly casual... "Hey, buddy," I said in a surprisingly casual tone. "Why don't you chase more appropriate quarry with your wild hunt pals? Maybe a hobbled rat would be more your speed." "No. I'm thinking a crippled stink bug. Or if that's too much of a challenge, perhaps catch a few worms." Morgana kicked me hard under the table. Grimhalt paled, turned to me, then glanced over my head. "Spirit warrior?" he laughed. "4th level? Today is my lucky day." He hefted his obscenely oversized mace. Perhaps taunting the zealot of the Wild Hunt was not my smartest opening maneuver. But jerks like Grimhalt always got under my skin. Every multiplayer game had them. Call them idiots, griefers, or whichever noms de guerre... How do you pronounce
Noms
that?
de guerre.
No, noms de guerre you like. They all fulfilled the same role. Make life as hard as possible for everyone else. They ruined quests, flooded chat channels with unimaginative obscenities, camped corpses, kicked puppies, and drowned kittens. You just wanted to kill them over and over until they logged out. 3 things, however, stopped me from answering his aggression with aggression of my own. First was Morgana's warning that I probably should have heeded a few seconds ago. Second, the Wayfarer Waypoint Inn had a policy of non-violence on the premises. I had no desire to be permanently uninvited from this place. Besides, this was neutral ground. The game wouldn't permit non-consensual PvP combat. And I wasn't consenting. Third, Grimhalt had 4 levels on me, which made the odds very much tilted in his favor. Corollary to that last point, yes, he was a flaming asshat, but he was a living flaming asshat, so he had to be a pretty good player to have survived with such manners in Thera. I was about to shift into the ether, scout the magical terrain, and buy time to think, when Harlix Hadri and Cassie Longstrider caught up to their companion. The ring of nails pounded into Harlix's bald, slate-blue head freaked me out. It just looked wrong. Was it a curse, or had he done it to himself? My instincts screamed that this guy was more dangerous than a dozen Grimhalts. Cassie was a wood elf. Long curls of dark brown hair, slightly slanted green eyes, high cheekbones, and delicately pointed ears. All standard-issue Sylvan. But she had that, look all you want, sailor, but hassle me and I will hand you your own head aura that was pure special forces. Neither, however, looked like they were spoiling for a fight. Harlix drew Grimholt closer. Okay, so Harlix, this is the pinhead guy?
Yeah.
All right, what's the order on this guy, voice-wise?
Uh, like Pinhead, you've seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of got a ethereal, distant, alien-esque voice, but clear and understandable.
Okay.
Those are pretty vague instructions, I know, but
Are you thinking, like, effects on this one, or just
yeah, maybe.
that? Okay. Don't start, he told. Oh, don't start, he told him in a whisper that could have sliced glass. Look closer. He has a truncated second player class in his placard. That means a secret and restricted class, you cretin. Grimholt squinted over my head and sneered as he saw it. So my secret class wasn't so secret. At least they couldn't read what it was. Cassie looked Morgana over and gave her a nod. Of recognition? Wasn't sure. Cassie made a gesture to Harlix, and he made another back to her. Sign language? Clever. Cassie pulled Grimholt back 5 paces. Please forgive my temporary but necessary associates, Harlix said, his tone softening. Fine, I said. All is forgiven, as long as you keep him on a short leash. And pick up after him. I voiced this loud enough so Grimholt heard. It got no response from him, but Cassie laughed. These 3 made a decent party. A tank cleric, spellcaster for damage at range, and a swashbuckler ranger who could likely fill whatever role was required in any given situation. They were lean and mean. Harlix went on. The game is hard enough without purposely seeking trouble. Don't you agree? I gave a non-committal shrug. In any event, if you could... Wait. In any event, if you could just answer a few questions, we will be on our way. Morgana said, We'd be happy to help and part company peaceful-like. She made a cutting motion by her lap that only I could see. Harlix withdrew a folded parchment from his starry robe and handed it to Morgana. She glanced it over, shook her head, and passed it to me. Wanted. The Red Knight. Villainous brigand and his gang of vile cutthroats terrorize the Duchy of Sendon, committing murder, theft, and many other crimes most heinous. Reward, 25,000 gold quins for the Red Knight's death. 3,000 gold quins for information leading to his capture. It was the same poster I'd come across in High Hill and here at the inn. Or almost the same. The reward had been significantly increased. This loser must be on a tear. The sketch of the Red Knight had also been improved with a few more details. His red full-plate mail was chunky, ugly as sin, battered, and, well, there was no other word to describe it but evil. The helmet had tiny slanted eye slits and breathing holes in a fanged mouth pattern. A bit dramatic, but effective in a terror-inducing way. In fact, it was something my anti-paladin brother might wear. If, that is, he wasn't safely being tortured in Duke Oppinicus's dungeon. I wondered if these 3 had been looking for this Red Knight the evening the Bloody Rooster burned. Did they think he'd said it? That implied a possible connection between the Knight and the Silent Syndicate. Without knowing what these 3 were really fishing for, I wasn't going to offer my opinions. Sorry, I told Harlix. Believe me, if I'd seen this guy, I'd tell you. Not so much a fan of jerks running around and ruining my day. I glanced at Grimholt. A brush of static stirred the tiny hairs on my arm. Magic? From Harlix? Harlix nodded, and his odd face revealed no readable emotions. Again, excuse me. Again, my apologies. If our paths cross again, I hope they are under more congenial circumstances. If you do see this knight, however, please send me a message. I will reward any assistance. I smiled and did the smart thing. Kept my mouth shut. All right, so that's them. We didn't get to check out, what was her name again? The ranger? The swashbuckler?
Yeah. She only has a few lines towards the end, so.
Okay.
And here.
All right, and do we want to do one more? Let's see, what time is it? We got 10 minutes.
Okay, so it would be great if you maybe the two at the end where Hector is reading some scrolls about drunken monkey style. And then
Okay.
at the very last bit is a part where he's using drunken monkey style kung fu in
Okay.
combat.
So it looks like the first one you're talking about is it all the same? Is it all the same scene that you're talking about, or
That's chapter.
chapter 38 is where we see a bit of, it says, and for a bit of drunken monkey style combat.
Yeah,
Okay.
and do the
Oh,
one
I
before
see.
that with the describing of the style.
All right, 31.
Because we really know why people read these books for the kung fu action, right?
Absolutely. That's why I read it. I shook out a roll of parchment, smoothed it flat, and read. Whoever had inked this had been 3 sheets to the wind. Oh, man. But if I understood the shaky calligraphy and illustrations, this scroll was a primer of drunken monkey style. Excuse me, guys. I'm still getting rid of gunk from an ear infection. The basic techniques allow the practitioner to flow around defenses and take advantage of openings with constant forward pressure. All standard stuff. That, however, is where the similarity to the human-based kung fu ended, and something else started. Something more... how to describe it? Random might be close, but that still missed the mark. To the end of chapter 31. Okay, just want to make sure. A drunken monkey boxer had counters for every strike and block in my sleeping dragon-style arsenal, and they could use them effortlessly, unthinkingly. In fact, the less they thought, the drunker they were, the better this worked. Or so claimed the text. I swallowed and read the next scroll. This one was on special techniques. Little was legible. Many passages careened off the rice paper and never wandered back to finish the sentence they started. I could make out a few of the titles, though, like Stinging Scorpion Slap, Broken Back Forward Kick, Chasing Swarm of Moths, Sticky Face Sticky Hands, and Dance of Endless Firecrackers. And I swore there were a few lines of nonlinear differential equations. That, or a spattering of old browned banana. Hard to tell. The parts toward the end covered advanced special techniques. These were more complicated and correspondingly harder for me to puzzle out. I managed, though, to decipher the titles and a portion of the text for 2. The first was called Wings of Butterfly. It began with delicate, almost poetic hand motions. This was followed by a part where ink had been spilled and completely obliterated most of the remaining instructions. One could, however, clearly make out the move's finale where a monkey boxer inserted his fist through the midsection of an armored opponent. Yikes. The other was the technique of the strangest attractor. It had dizzying foot placement charts along with stick figure contortionist instructions. Using a weave of chaotic motions, the practitioner trapped their victim with increasingly smaller, more refined locks and joint compressions, and then with an accelerating spiral of momentum finished with an elbow strike between the eyes. A surprisingly clear anatomical illustration showed the result of that last blow, the force blasting both eyes and optical nerves into the brain, where they bounced around about the skull, smashed the brainstem, and severed the spinal cord. This stuff had to be made up. And yet, in what I could read, I found no flaw in the physics or martial arts. Then, only with the greatest trepidation, I dared unroll the last scroll. It was covered by smeared monkey paw prints. Totally useless. I'd seen enough, though, to know that if this was real, without training to counter drunken monkey boxing, I couldn't win against my equal in this style, let alone defeat a master. Cho had wanted me to see these, so I'd know I was going to lose. All right. I love those descriptions. All right, let's see. Chapter 38. Rolled my shoulders.
Or there's a shorter version if you want to, if you're running out of time.
Leapt.
So in this scene, Hector is against a much more skilled opponent, higher level. And to get out of it, he's going to use the drunken monkey style. But in order to use drunken monkey style, you have to be drunk.
Right. Of course.
So at some point, as a challenge to you, Jeff, if you could kind of sound drunk after he starts drinking.
I wonder how I could possibly make that happen. I don't know. I think I can manage at some point. I leapt back to the door, opened my inventory, and in a flash had Elmac's flask of Red Dragon whiskey in hand. And guzzled. All of it. My drunken resistance helped me down the entire thing without gagging. Liquid plasma scorched my lacerated organs, but also warmed my blood, lubricated muscles, loosened tendons, and soothed my jagged nerves. And wavering, wobbling dots then lined up in my fuzzy thinking. Hello, drunken boxing. I laughed and dropped the emptied flask. This might be fun. Yamina stared, confused. Then a glimmer of understanding crossed her features. Oh, look! In my still-open inventory, that's 1762 Gautier? Gautier Cognac d'Am. Compliments of Miss Lillian Carrotbringer. I'd been saving that for Elmac, but he wouldn't deny a comrade a drink or three in a pinch. Excuse me. Fine friend, that Elmac. I tapped it. The bottle appeared in my hand. Yamina was on me in a blink. Double Cobra-style strikes sliced at my eyes and throat. Smashed through the door where I'd been a split second earlier. Fortunately, I had tripped and made a teetering, tottering recovery, the so-called broken stairs defense. I toasted my good fortune, upended the cognac, and drank. Yamina grabbed for it. I twisted out of her way. She missed, with one hand. Her other hand, though, landed an open palm to my gut. I reeled back, arms pinwheeling. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it might. Actually, I wasn't feeling much of anything. Hooray! That strike did regrettably expel the contents of my mouth and throat, shot them out my nose, blasting alcohol straight through the blood-brain barrier of my sinuses. This was the dreaded salamander breath technique, not recommended for novices. Usually one used it in conjunction with a firebrand to produce a gout of flame. Without fire, the results were slightly less than spectacular. I wiped lines of snot from my face. 2 new daggers were in Yamina's hands. She did a double feint and stabbed. I danced, back and forth, this way, that. a cross between a dwarven jig and a Cossack's kicking jumping display of manly acrobatics. She missed again, and screamed in outrage as she missed once more. I then zigged when I should have not. She sliced me open to the rib bones. It felt like a swarm of wasps stung along that unzipped line of flesh, but the pain quickly faded. Had her blade been poisoned? I hadn't seen any pop-up alert. On the other hand, I could have missed it in my moderately distracted state. Well, I was numb, so either way, I really didn't care. My swimming vision then centered upon Yamina, perfectly poised in tiger stance. And, excuse me, and I remembered she had burned down the bloody rooster, chased me and my friends across 2 worlds, murdered who knew how many along the way, and Oswald. My poor friend Oswald. Oh yes, Miss Yamina Susara, we did we did indeed have accounts to settle this evening. Sorry, guys. I stopped messing around and fought. Together we stepped and counterstepped, blocked and riposted, kicked and threw knees at vital locations, locked in a precise, lethal tango. Her blades flicked and probed my defenses. I slapped aside the razor edges, grabbed her wrists. She twisted away. I couldn't tell where my body ended and hers began. That's how evenly we were matched. So intertwined were our limbs. It was a seduction of sorts, the courting of 2 praying mantises. Perhaps not the best metaphor here, considering how that ended for the male. Then, with what I thought were my unpredictable, staggering steps, she began to stagger as well, mirroring my motions, improvising her own. Was she learning my moves? Some ability of her Soul Stealer class? Foul, I say. Where was the referee? I had to up my game, so I focused, or whatever the equivalent was in my current condition, on my new drunken boxing skill, calling upon the part that let me sporadically use a random basic special technique. I then employed the slopping toast to heaven, and she blocked the uppercut with the 2 broken gates defense. I tried the stinging scorpion slap. She nullified it with fumbling fists. I started chair with 2 legs. She planted her foot between mine and stopped it with the no personal space technique. What a cheater! I grabbed her sleeve, twisted, and locked her arm in place. Yamina's eyes narrowed. With the flexibility of a contortionist, standing less than a handspan away from me, her foot lashed straight up and caught me under the chin. As I flew off my feet, Yamina transformed her leg's upward momentum into a full cartwheel and a backflip out of her dress. This could only be because of the bodysuit of tesseract spider silk she wore and its slippery properties, but still a magnificently executed maneuver. She landed in the corner of the room, a feat worthy of a master ninja with high levels of wire work. I, meanwhile, executed a not as perfect backflip and landed with the grace of a bag of cement, breaking the nightstand and bed. All right. And that's it. So I'm so fucking stoked about this. I love these kung fu scenes. It's like it totally plays just like the movies. I think you did an excellent job.
I threw a few gratuitous, kung fu movie references in there explicitly. So if people aren't familiar with Drunken boxing, they can go look at it.
Yeah. So awesome. Thank you so much, Eric, for coming and hanging out with us on Sound Booth Theater Live. And like I said, I'm going to get started recording this next Monday. So everyone, just keep an eye out for the release of the Kindle version if you can't wait for the Audible version. But the Audible version should be coming in, let's say, a month and 2 weeks or so. And since I'm flying solo on this one, I should be able to get it done pretty quick. So, Eric, you got anything else to say to the people?
Thanks for reading, Jeff. Awesome as usual. It's good to hear Hector again, too. And, it'll be dropping soon. I don't want to promise anything, but I'm on my last format pass now. So making sure everything is squared up right.
Cool. Eric, do you think you could drop a like a Facebook post in the Sound Booth Theater Live Facebook group whenever it's ready to be consumed on Kindle?
Absolutely.
All right, cool. So everybody, if you want to check out the first book, Hero of Thera by Eric Nylund, the link is in the description below. And the rest of our links, if this is your first time watching Sound Booth Theater Live, you can check out all of our Facebook groups, all the Facebook groups that support us. Excuse me. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. So thanks again, Eric. Thank you guys for coming and hanging out, and y'all have a good day.
Thanks.